your host, Will Carey. As always, thank you for tuning in. I think I'm going to try to maintain a schedule of every Wednesday for the foreseeable future for the show. But for the people who do tune in regularly, I really appreciate you being here. I'm trying to build a career, and you're a part of it. And this show is a part of it, as well as my stand-up. So thank you. We're going to talk today to my friend John Bilancini. John Bilancini is a comedian. He's originally from Ohio, and we talk a bit about his origins from Ohio, as well as our kind of shared interests in punk and pop punk. And then we also do a little bit of shop talk about what it's like to produce shows in New York City, because if you're not aware of what it's like to do comedy in New York, I imagine a good portion of you might be. But if you're listening from another part of the city, of the country or world, which there's a few people who have downloaded this show in Ireland and the Ukraine and China. So if you guys are still here, thank you, because I really, really love the idea that I can reach people in other countries from this, because I'd like to travel more. I'd like to do shows, and eventually I want to do shows on every different continent. But if you come to New York and you're not immediately in the New York club scene and getting spots regularly from the clubs, then you've got to do your own shows. And we talk a lot about the scene that's producing your shows independently, as well as working with venues and trying to get people to come out to your show. And it was really enlightening. And John's he's a really good friend. We became pretty good friends quickly. So we'll talk a bit about that. And thank you again. I appreciate you folks for being here. And let's go to my chat with John Bilancini.
I've found that New York comedians are very eager to help, especially out-of-town people.
Oh, yeah.
I try to find spots. And I've had on my one monthly show that I run, I think maybe the last 3 months in a row, if not 2 of the last 3 months, I've had an out-of-town comic on who was just looking for a spot. And I found that I feel like the best way to get booked in New York is to visit New York from somewhere else.
I found that too. There was a time when a buddy of mine, one of my best comedy buddies who still lives in Baltimore, he was up here to visit, and I think things weren't going that, I wasn't getting a lot of sets at the time, so he I think booked as many sets in the weekend he was here as I had in the whole year at that point.
I had
slightly darker time.
I had a lucky week where, I mean, I don't get booked a ton, but it just so happened that every show I was booked on pretty much for the month that wasn't a show I was running was in the same week. So I had 5 spots in a week, which never happens.
Yeah.
And the out-of-town comic I was talking about was supposed to be on 3 of those shows with me. So he ended up he didn't show up for one of them, but I was like, oh, that's good. And I just need to move back to Cleveland, I guess, and then I can come out here and get booked a lot.
Right. Well, maybe you could live like slightly outside of New York and then just commute in.
I wonder what the proximity rule is for that. We're willing to help you if you're more than 200 miles away.
Exactly. No, I think what could maybe, because I generally do think that comics in general are mostly very good people who want to help out other comics.
I agree.
That's what I think the rule is.
Yeah.
There's obviously exceptions to the rule where people are dicks, but I feel that doesn't happen very often. But maybe it's what could ever be construed as road work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like maybe Connecticut's not really a road gig. That's a gig that you have to drive a long way to get to, or take the Metro North. But like, say maybe like 2 or 3 hours would constitute like a road show.
Right. Get out of that little window and then we have.
Exactly.
But no, I think New York comics are super helpful to other comedians, at least in the circles we run in, which are pretty pretty wide circles because it encompasses several different groups, but we're, if nothing else, at least friendly with somebody, even if you don't hang out with them all the time or whatever.
Exactly.
But yeah, everyone is very eager to help other people, and because people are here from all over the place,
Right.
it's easy to find somebody from the area where you're trying to go, and that person will likely want to help you out. So
Yeah. It's sort of like, have you ever heard of this? I don't know exactly what you call it. Maybe it's a book, maybe it's a zine, but it's called Book Your Own Fucking Life.
yes, yeah, I'm familiar
Okay,
with it.
great. So it was like a network of places where you could do underground punk shows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like house shows across the country, and
Yeah. So I feel like comedians have, I would imagine, I think, a similar network, and then I also think, because we're all sort of brothers and sisters in this venture that we've decided to embark on.
yeah, I agree. It's not you. I think people expect you to be more competitive, but it's not like acting where you're constantly, or maybe not the same people, but you're auditioning, against somebody, and
Yeah.
I don't think in most cases you're not in direct competition against somebody to get a spot somewhere. Like, it just doesn't really work that way.
Exactly. Even if you don't personally find someone funny, you can at least go, well, they're not taking anything from me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
I think there's
probably an audience for them, and it might be this audience. So who knows?
exactly, because I think, and this is, I think, something that maybe some people, I feel like most of the people in our circle know this, but like generally, if you're easy to work with and are enjoyable to be around, that does a lot for you.
I agree.
As far as like doing things.
And sometimes when you're not, it still works out if you're talented enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just a good thing for just your everyday life.
Right.
life.
If people want you around,
You'll be around.
you should aim for that.
Yeah.
Whenever possible.
Mm-hmm. So would you say that your other, because I know you're from Ohio.
Oh, should I tell people who I am?
Oh, I'll record an intro for you.
Oh, okay.
Beforehand.
Okay. No problem.
Yeah, we could do it now, John Bilancini.
No, that's totally fine. I am John Bilancini.
I try to make it nice and organic.
I appreciate
the introductions.
That. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, because you've become like one of my really close friends. I don't feel like we've known each other for a super long time.
No, not really. It's only been maybe like a year and a half.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew who you were before that, but we weren't like really close at all.
Yeah, like the first time I really remember encountering you was when I was hosting Kevin Frolics's roast, and
that was a lot of fun,
and called you John Bilancini.
Yep.
And that was
one of thousands who have called me.
But I didn't even
Bilancini.
realize I was sick burning you at that time.
Yeah, it's true. I was actually called John Bilancini at an audition spot last night. I was brought up to the crowd as John Bilancini, and I'm just kind of used to it by now. And actually, Amy said Amy, my wife, said that. I know you know that, but for the sake of the listening audience, I was told, she said something along the lines, I should just change my name to like Johnny Bubbles or something like that. Just think of another B name.
Yeah. Oh, if this were the 80s, you could come up with like a really like silly comedy name. You could be Johnny B. Funny.
Johnny Bananas?
Johnny.
I feel like there's probably many comedians who call themselves Johnny Bananas.
I imagine
Johnny B. Funny is pretty good though.
Yeah.
I like that.
I like that. And you could come out to Johnny Be Good by
Oh,
Jeff
of course.
Barry.
You'd have to.
Yeah, every time. That's a good angle. I think we should work on that.
There's a lot of food options. Johnny Bacon.
Johnny Bacon. And basically Johnny and any noun is a good
Yeah, I
name.
know. It's so. I mean, I actually grew up with so many nicknames.
Yeah.
I used to get new ones constantly, and when I was in college, my friends used to give me nicknames, like a new one every few days. So it's so easy to add something to Johnny. So
Yeah, absolutely. Now
and most people call me Johnny B anyway.
Oh,
So,
that's good. I might start doing that now.
Because a lot of people, surprisingly, has not. At least, I mean, I never suggested, of course, because I just go by John. But most of the people I knew before I started doing comedy called me Johnny B. So it's like my friend Chris, who we played poker with.
Yes.
He always calls me Johnny B because it's just how he knows me, as Johnny B.
Okay. Killer. Because the reason I bring this up is, again, we're talking about the instant brotherhood of stand-up comedians.
Right.
Again, haven't known you super long, but I feel like, again, we're pretty close despite the relatively short amount of time that I've known you.
Right. Yeah.
So you're from Cleveland, yeah? I'm
from the Cleveland area. I say Cleveland because it's the easiest way for people who don't know the geography of Northern Ohio to understand where I'm from. Actually, more specifically, I'm from Oberlin.
Okay.
And I say that because if people don't know Cleveland, they might know Oberlin College. But in actuality, I'm from South Amherst, Ohio, which is a mile away from Oberlin.
Okay. What's South Amherst like?
It's a tiny little village in Northern Ohio. It's pretty rural. We actually had about, I want to say the population, last time I checked, was about 1,200 people.
Okay, yeah.
It's literally a one stoplight town. It's very, very tiny. Basically, the actual word for it is considered a village. It's just a stop in between. Like Amherst is not a big city, but it's a fairly.
Yeah, no, you're good.
I was gonna burp.
Okay.
I'm good. Oh, okay. Well,
yeah, you're cool, man. Don't worry about it.
Amherst is, I guess, the sister city to South Amherst, and there's probably about, I want to say, like 10,000 people there, maybe a little more, and that's like the better known, and we were sort of like the hick accompaniment to Amherst.
So true small town rural America.
Oh yeah, but I didn't grow up like that. I lived in South Amherst for the first 18 years of my life.
Okay.
But we went to a Catholic school in Amherst, and Amherst considered it was preppier and had more stoplights.
It had 3.
Had businesses. There was a bowling alley. So Amherst actually had things, and I spent 1st through 7th grade in Amherst.
Okay.
At a Catholic school, and then in 8th grade I transferred to South Amherst Middle School, and that was when I met the people who I ended up going to high school with at Firelands. And Firelands is technically, the address is Oberlin. Oberlin is in itself, if you know anything about the college is super liberal artsy,
right?
A very, very progressive school. Basically every stereotype that you hear about liberal arts education, Oberlin embodies it. Lena Dunham went there.
Okay.
Karen O went there.
So a lot of performance art.
A lot of very arty people. Exactly. A lot of activists.
Okay.
And Oberlin, the city, is sort of outside of the college. It's kind of urban, I guess you could say, which is weird considering the location, because it is sort of smack dab in the middle of a lot of rural areas.
When you say urban, it's like a built-up metropolis.
No, I mean that it's more, not really. No, I guess what I mean by like sort of urban is that I definitely went to a country school.
Okay.
Where they considered it like themselves a city school.
Okay,
that makes sense. I mean,
yeah, that makes sense.
On the scale of Mayberry to New York City, like they would be, obviously not size-wise, but they would be closer to like your experience in a public school in New York City than a public school in Idaho.
Yes, I know what you mean. Like where I went to high school, I think my graduating class was like maybe 400 people.
Okay. So that's probably a lot like my high school.
But then my college was outside of Baltimore, was in Towson.
You went to Towson,
so,
that's right.
To me, huge city, but to most people, kind of quaint. But I was like, oh my gosh, I can walk to the Barnes and Noble. this is just changing my life. Well, let me ask you this, because I've heard this joke a lot about when people talk about like the identity of certain states, and then they get to Ohio and they don't have anything to say. Mm-hmm. Is there something like and maybe it's different because of where you were, because I think I can't really put my thumb on Ohio's culture or their identity.
Sure.
Can you explain Ohio to me?
I can try.
What's sort of like the vibe? Because like if you go to imagine if you're like in Florida, there's a definite vibe to Florida, or New York there's a definite vibe to New York, I think.
Okay, sure. Also, if you want, I can just very briefly, just to put a cap on it. I went to this school called Firelands, and it's actually about 15 miles away from my house, because the way that school worked was it was area-wise, it was one of the biggest school districts in the entire state. Population-wise, I think I graduated with 340 people. So anyway, rural school. But Ohio, in a nutshell, I think that what it comes, and I'm going to admit that I only know Northern Ohio very well. My understanding of a lot of the other parts of the states is pretty superficial. But I think that unlike a lot of states, except for like the real biggies like California or Texas, a lot of states don't have more than 2 major cities. Ohio has 3.
Okay.
And I think that those cities sort of define the way the state is seen by other people. I'm most familiar with Northern Ohio, the area by the lake, and that's the touchstones up there are Cleveland. On the west side, it's Toledo, and then south of Cleveland is Akron. Like three fairly decent-sized cities right along the north coast. The character of the area is fairly industrial, and I guess at this point it's like post-industrial, similar to Baltimore, actually.
So heavy industry town.
Heavy industry town. My dad worked for U.S. Steel until I was 7 years old, and he got laid off. He worked there for, 10 years before I was born too. But, like my father worked for U.S. Steel. Steel was huge when I was young. The auto industry was huge. A lot of Ford was headquartered in Northern Ohio.
Okay.
All of that went to Kentucky and elsewhere later on.
Right.
But there are still a few Ford plants, but they're mostly gone. So it was, and when I talk about how I'm from a sort of a rural area, I'm only about 45 miles away from Cleveland. So it's about the distance between Baltimore and DC.
Okay.
And because everything in Northern Ohio is connected by 2 major highways, Interstate 90 and the Turnpike. So I would think of distances when I was going places as, all right, you jump on 90 and you get off at this exit. So it's actually pretty easy to get around. And the drive to Cleveland was about 45 minutes maybe. So I didn't spend a lot of time there until I was older. But now when I go to Ohio, I spend about half the time in Cleveland doing stuff.
Right on.
But so that's sort of the northern part of the state, and Cleveland has a lot of, which I've talked about in my comedy. There's a lot of negative connotations, and it's not like, oh, this is a bad place sort of negative. It's more of a, this is an easy place to shit on kind of negative.
Right.
Because they were known for, and I bring up, it's in one of my jokes where I talk about the river catching on fire.
Yeah.
And that was such an easy thing to say, and I've also talked about this before, where that used to be a good thing. For the heavy industry cities, something like that was considered a good thing way back when.
Right.
Because the river actually caught on fire like 4 or 5 times. And it was only when it happened in 1970, when the city was on a steep decline, the whole city almost went bankrupt.
Yeah.
And it happened then, and the city was already sort of becoming a laughingstock. So then it was like, how your river caught on fire. It's so disgusting.
Right.
But of course it was, because for 70 years at that point in time, U.S. Steel was pumping shit into the river.
Into the river.
And it was great. In 1940, it was great when it caught on fire because it meant that they were doing a lot of business, pumping a lot of shit in the river.
Yeah.
It was only later on that it became, you know, this,
it's like, no,
this
the fire
thing.
is smaller now.
Yeah, and there's other things like the, you know, which I also mentioned in the joke, like Major League and the Cleveland Indians, and the team's so bad that they made a movie about them, and other things. Just I hate. I follow sports pretty closely, and I'm a big Cleveland sports fan, and I hate any time a national publication runs any kind of story about Cleveland. Somebody immediately posts the Cleveland tourism video, which is something that this comedian named Mike Polk made, which was goofing on Cleveland, and the whole thing was like, come look at both of our buildings, and then the end of it ends with, at least, or it ends with, we're not Detroit. So someone will immediately post that and think they're the funniest person in the world, like they're not the 1,000th person this week to post that on an article about Cleveland sports. And
Sure.
so that it's a city that it gets a lot of.
It's like a punchline now.
Yeah, it's a punchline, and it's not, because Cleveland is a lot. I mean, they're good people, and there's a lot of cool things to do there. I really am a huge booster of the city. I like it a lot. For various reasons, I don't envision myself ending up there again, but it's one of my favorite places to visit. I have a great time every time I'm there. So I guess that would be like Northern Ohio.
Okay.
Once you get out of Northern Ohio, there's sort of no man's lands to the southeast and the southwest, and then in the middle is Columbus. And Columbus is the capital. I see it as a very sterile city compared to Cleveland.
Okay.
Like Cleveland and Cincinnati have histories. They have these, they're different histories, but they're old cities and they have these histories. And Columbus is an old city too, but I feel like because it's the capital and it's sort of the face of the state.
Yeah.
I feel like it's very corporate. It's probably not the word I necessarily want, but it's very buttoned up. And also Ohio State's there, so there's everything attendant with
and the
second
crew.
largest college in the country. Yeah, and the crew's there as well, and the Blue Jackets.
And the Blue Jackets, yeah.
But so that's sort of has its own identity. I don't think that nationally Columbus really has an identity, I would say. Not like Cincinnati or Cleveland does.
Yeah.
And then sort of on that latitudinal
Even Cincinnati,
line would
I can
be
think of
Dayton to the west, and
yeah. Okay, so
and then Cincinnati has its own thing going on. I call it a suburb of Kentucky. But
well, Cincinnati, I just think of like they put like chili on top of spaghetti. That's the one thing I think of when I think of Cincinnati. Okay, so
yeah, it's a Greek thing.
Yeah,
Which Cincinnati has a German lineage. Like they have a big German history. I didn't even know they had a Greek one, but apparently that's where the chili thing comes from, though.
Fascinating. Okay, so you're growing up in a small town. Your dad's a steel worker. What did your mom do?
My mom's a nurse, or was a nurse. She recently retired.
Oh,
So
excellent.
yeah, very very Midwestern middle class jobs.
This makes sense because when I look at you, because you look like you're out of a Norman Rockwell illustration, and I mean this in the best way
I appreciate
possible.
that. It's coming from someone who I could also see in a Norman Rockwell illustration. So.
Well, we're just the wholesome image of America and comedy in New York. John. That would be a fun sketch. That would be like a fun thing, just like wholesome.
Yeah,
just like because that's like you
everybody's
can't see
just
it, but
playing Wall-E.
yeah. So, and did you have brothers or sisters?
I do. I have two sisters.
Two sisters,
older and younger.
Okay, and you're in the middle.
Yeah, all 2 years apart.
All right. So you got classic American family situation. So you grew up. What kind of a kid were you? Were you like you say you're into Cleveland sports? Were you?
I was. I was a super athletic kid. Like it was just
Really?
all the time sports.
Did you play sports in
I
school?
did. I started playing soccer when I was 5, and I played soccer
Likewise.
until 18. At various capacities.
Okay.
I
What
also-
position did you play?
I started out as a forward, and I used to, when I was young, I was very, very good. Mostly because I was much taller than everybody else, as I imagine you have some experience with as well.
Yes.
So I could outrun everybody just because I was so much bigger. I had much longer legs. So I would score like 4 or 5 goals a game playing rec ball growing up, and
Awesome.
then I switched to midfielder when I was in high school because I played my first 2 years of high school.
Okay.
And at that point in time, everyone else had caught up, obviously.
Right.
And I never bothered developing any of my other skills, apart from being able to shoot the ball really well and outrun people. So now when I couldn't outrun anybody anymore, I definitely could not outdribble them. So
Yeah.
my role became smaller and smaller until I quit. And then
Yeah, I remember trying out for soccer in middle school and not making it, and then kind of being done. I was never really good at
were
it
you a
or
goalie?
enjoyed
I
it.
thought you remember you telling me you were a goalie.
I was a goalie. I was also a defender.
Okay.
A lot as well. I personally enjoyed goal, but I would get so nervous unless we were like really high up.
Okay, yeah.
But like, because I have these like fantasies of starting like a all comedian soccer team, and I would want to be the goalkeeper.
I'd
'cause-
be into it. I'm so out of shape now. I would need
Dude,
like a 6-month head start.
Yeah. So am I. But I would like I would see I could get back. I could like get back into at least doing something athletic.
Yeah,
Do you know Sinead Hennessy, right?
I do. Yeah.
So
I know
she
she's super
she
into
played
soccer in Queens.
Yeah, and she plays on like she plays on an actual team that's on the American soccer pyramid. So
Oh, okay.
when I had her on, we talked about that. So maybe that's something we can get happening.
That would be awesome. There's a lot of people. Lindsay Bowling played soccer in college.
That's right. I
At
need to get
Louisville.
her. I want to talk to her.
I know I've talked to more than a handful of comedians who talked about playing soccer growing up.
Yeah, because like for as global of a language as I think soccer is.
I know Justin Perez he's on a team.
Yes, he is with Christian Polanco. As global, because I think, and this is my getting back into soccer is a relatively recent thing in like the last year and a half or so, and it's something that my girlfriend tolerates,
Right. Yeah.
generously. But I find as global as a game as it is, and I really think of it as like the world's game in most places. It's something that like I also find uniquely suburban America.
Oh yeah.
Because like it's like if your parents weren't going to let you play American football, you were probably playing soccer.
Yeah, and you needed to live somewhere that had the space that could have the fields that size. So
Yeah.
it was definitely a suburban thing. And also, I'm older than you are, and I think I started at the beginning of the boom for youth soccer.
Yes.
And then so by the time you were of an age to start playing, it was sort of in full swing. But yeah, I think I hit it right at the beginning, and
Yeah, because I remember when MLS started.
yeah,
I
me too.
remember going to RFK Stadium and seeing DC United play.
I was in college during that.
Yeah.
I guess it was probably a few years after they started, but yeah, because there were a couple people I went to college with who were big DC United supporters since I went to college in DC.
Yeah, and I was in Maryland, so I was like, oh, well, that's the closest one, so I guess I like DC. But
Right.
I cheer for New York now because that's my identity.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So you were in high school when MLS started?
I think so. I think it was like my sophomore year, maybe something like that.
Okay.
Pretty sure it was like the mid '90s, right?
Yeah, it was like 1994.
Okay,
It's
so
after the
that
World
would have
Cup.
been my freshman year in high school then, 94,
Okay.
95.
Oh, so you're much older than me than I
I'm
thought.
35 years old, unless you are looking to sign talent, in which case I am 24 years old.
Yes, 24. Everybody, we're all 20. We're all in our 20s in this.
On a bad day, I'm
That's right.
28, but
Yeah.
you know, usually I'm 24.
Yeah. Well, you also are very youthful. I think.
That's, I'm doing my best to destroy that, but no, I do tend to get taken for younger than I actually am, which is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I played a lot of sports. I loved basketball when I was a kid. I played CYO basketball.
Me too.
And pretty much every season. When I quit soccer, I switched to football. When I was in high school. I did 2 years of football. Almost played in college.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So that was really kind of the path you were on was sports and athletics.
Yeah, I feel like that's something you sort of have. Not that it's thrust upon you, but you're so immersed in that when you grow up in certain cultures. And I grew up, in Northern Ohio, which lives and dies by its sports teams, normally dies. And so that's just what you do. You play sports unless you hate them. I mean, my parents wouldn't have made me play if they didn't like them, but I always enjoyed them. So I used to play around the house with my sisters all the time.
Okay.
Play basketball, and I used to do that thing where I set up a baseball field in my backyard, and our fence that separated us from the neighbor's yard was right field, and I measured it and everything. And I would throw softballs up in the air and just hit them and then chase them and come back. And it was really sad in retrospect, but I would spend a whole day doing that.
Yeah, that's that sounds. Depending on how your relationship with your dad was, that could be a metaphor for something. Depending on who's telling.
My
that
dad
story.
was also my soccer coach growing up, though. He was
Oh, that's
very
cool.
involved.
Oh, that's great. That's super. So okay, so because I guess I'm trying to piece, because this is something I'm starting to find that lots of comedians like sports. I for the longest time thought that because I was studying, I got into doing theater. I was like, well, I cannot like sports at all now.
Right.
And I probably held on to that until the year 2014.
Okay.
I'm trying to see how do you go from athletics, which is like which is performance driven and their stats, are the arts like theater or movies a part of your life at all during this time? Are you into that as well?
Yes, but I didn't really start until movies, like mid high school. I started becoming a snob when it came to movies, and I majored in media studies when I was in college.
Okay.
And did film criticism was my primary area of study. So I turned into a huge snob when I went to college about movies. I never really.
What spoke to you? What movie spoke to you?
When I was younger, well, I used to, a couple that I love, but I wouldn't consider them good movies. I mean, I would. They're great movies. But,
Can we devote like a few minutes to talking about SLC?
Oh, I would love to. Absolutely.
Okay, because I cannot talk to anyone else about this movie except you and this one other punk rocker I know.
I think there's
I
a couple
remember-
people. I think Sam Ruddy is really into it.
Oh, good. I'll talk to her about that tomorrow. She's doing my show.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, because again, as a suburban youth growing up in small town America, whose first exposure to live music was a DIY punk show. I still want to get the lead singer of the first band I ever saw. He was the first guy I ever saw play music live. I got to get him on, but that means I got to go back to my hometown, which takes some time.
Yeah. Do it during when you're there for like a holiday
Christmas.
or something like that. Exactly.
So I completely lost my train of thought. I'm going to get it back. Don't worry.
Sure. SLC Punk.
Yeah, SLC Punk. When I saw that movie, I was like, oh, okay, this speaks to me. I also think, and I want to test this theory on you as well, and then I want to talk about this movie.
Okay.
I find punk rock, and maybe even pop punk specifically, a uniquely suburban form of music.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Especially pop punk.
Yeah. It doesn't really exist in major cities.
Right. No, punk rock did. I mean, it started in actually, Cleveland was one of the places where punk rock started.
Yeah?
But yeah, American punk rock before New York was in Cleveland. It was Detroit and Cleveland, and then New
Interesting.
York. and then
Okay.
Los Angeles. But
Wow.
but yeah, I agree. It is. I think pop punk especially is very suburban.
Yeah.
And my main group of friends who I hung out with before I got super into comedy were all pop punk people, who a lot of whom had bands in New York City, and still some of them still do.
Cool.
And a lot of them did grow up in New York, which obviously isn't suburban, but most of them grew up in Astoria,
Okay.
which sort of has a suburban feel to it,
Yeah, I think so.
and also Long Island.
Yeah, Long Island or maybe parts of
And
Jersey.
my friends who moved from elsewhere, my friend Grath was the lead singer of a band. He's from the Baltimore area. He's from Perrysville, I think.
Oh yeah, I know Perrysville.
So
Yeah, what is that what is that phenomenon that, I mean, it's a certain amount of longing for something greater than what your life is.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I definitely think that's the case. I actually got into pop punk later in life. Like I didn't really get very into pop punk until I was 24. I listened to like regular punk rock before that.
Yeah.
But that I didn't even get into until I was 17. So I can see, especially in the way the songs are structured, and you talk about this in one of your jokes, actually.
Yes, I do.
The themes are very suburban themes. It's like, I need to get out of this town and do something. And
Yeah.
I think that it lends itself to that because the subject matter pairs nicely with suburban life.
Yes.
Like the I feel like that's why the more political punk bands maybe come from cities as opposed to this, suburban areas, because they're dealing with weightier, or not necessarily weight. I mean, because things
Yeah. Or
things
even like the
affect you no matter what. If it's politics or feeling alone in high school,
right.
that's a big deal to you too.
Exactly. And for me, at least, it was the first time like I had heard bands that were singing about my life. Because again, lots of other like the like a lot of the punk rock that had a political tinge to it, like that was coming out of DC. I wasn't paying it. I wasn't really
Exactly.
I wasn't paying attention or astute enough to really wrap my head around it.
Right.
But I could listen to Blink 182 and hear funny, goofy songs that are slightly juvenile, and go, oh, okay, goofball punk rock, and there's a sense of humor to it.
Right.
Like the way the Ramones were sort of like big, almost cartoon characters, almost. That's what I remember really grabbing it. So you got into pop punk around 17. When did you see SLC Punk?
I saw it when I was in college. When did it come out? Like 98?
Hold that thought.
Sure.
Hold that thought. I'll find out, because I remember seeing it renting it on VHS
I owned it on VHS, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I know it came. We didn't see it until a couple years after it.
1998.
Okay, 98. So I think it premiered at Sundance maybe in 98. And then I think we saw it around 2000 maybe. And I don't remember how we saw it the first time, but then I did own it on VHS. And two of my very close friends in college were both we were the punks on campus.
Did you dress the part?
Oh yeah, I wasn't as overt as they were. My friend Matt, who I think you've met, he comes up from DC a lot and visits. He had green mohawks, and he gave himself a balding man haircut one time, and a lot of things like that. But yeah, my friends, more so than me, had their hair dyed a lot. I did too. I went through various colors when I was in college, and then we would just a lot of hoodies, a lot of band T-shirts.
Yeah.
But I think we found it around 2000 and all got super into it because they did the same styles as us, and also my friend Paul he grew up on Long Island. He was in ska bands growing up. and my friend Matt was from several cities. The last place he lived was a suburb of Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Before he went to college, and we both, all three of us sort of had this sort of suburban ennui thing going on, I guess. So, and we just thought it was fun because it was like, this would be us if it was 20 years ago or something, whatever. Or I guess I was 85 in the movie.
Yeah, I definitely remember thinking, well, it isn't exactly me, but it's more or less I would see wanting to be that. Do you feel like now you relate to it maybe slightly differently? Like, because I imagine, because I know what your day job is,
right?
You maybe have a little bit of a closer connection to Steve-O, Matthew Lillard's character,
right,
who eventually stops being a punk and then goes to law school.
I would say that's almost 100% what I did in my life. I don't know that I always saw Steve-O as my friend Matt, because they were his character throughout most of the movie is very similar to how Matt was in college. I would probably at that time would have related the most to Jason Segel's character.
Yeah.
Although I wasn't, I was somewhat into hardcore too. I think I got into hardcore before, or at least the bands I liked, the punk bands I liked were hardcore bands more so than like straight punk bands.
Yeah.
Like I was a huge H2O fan.
Oh yeah, I remember
was like
H2O.
super melodic hardcore, but
exactly.
It wasn't the Warzone stuff or anything like that.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't get into hardcore until probably college. I remember listening to trying to think if I listened to. I was maybe more metal. I had more of a metal tint. Listened to more metal when I was in high school.
Okay.
But kind of, your typical stuff like Metallica. And,
sure.
And I remember going through a big 80s hair metal phase.
Okay.
And then having Stains break the cycle and be going yeah, I am on the outside. that whole thing.
Oh yeah.
Because the thing where you go by now that you have all of this white privilege that you're aware of, you just go back and go, yeah, what was I? Why was I mad? I mean, I know I was mad, and I know it was real. That's why, when I think
for most of it was girl related for me.
Yeah, that was definitely.
I had very, very immature. Why don't girls like me? Stuff going on.
Yeah, I had a lot of that. That too. So you're in high school. You're a punk rocker in Ohio.
Yeah, actually, not so much. It was actually more. I didn't really get super into punk until it was actually the summer I graduated high school.
Okay.
So then when I went to when I moved to DC for college, that was when I really got into it. I was super preppy in high school.
I could see that.
And
you were on the football team.
The reason I'm on the football team ties into what I'm going to say right now. Is that I got bullied hardcore 8th through up until 11th grade. My classmates collectively decided one day that I was gay, and taunted me for several years, and it got like physical. I brought a date to homecoming my freshman year, and some guy walked up and grabbed my ass because he thought it was funny, and just stuff like that.
Oh, jeez.
And my solution ultimately was, if you can't beat them, join them, and that's why I played football.
Okay.
Because as soon as I stopped being a soccer fag and became a football player, I wasn't gay anymore. So
high schoolers.
I was never actually gay to begin with, but
yeah, and I got that too. We were soccer players that got called grass fairies where I was from, and there's much less padding. There's a
I know it's
even though it's not really a contact sport. I heard a few people. I felt bad about it. I remember at least more than one time, just trying to kick a ball and then the ball moving and then somebody's stomach being in the way, and I felt bad about it.
I did a lot of inadvertent destruction when I was.
Yeah, this was back when if someone got hurt, we would all take a knee.
Yeah.
While they carried the hurt child off.
Right.
Okay, so
So I was preppy and quiet and very smart in high school. And I was friends with a lot of people, but I also got hardcore bullied for a few years. And
yeah.
so I was one of those people who were like, I can't wait to get out of this town. I was all about that.
Right.
I wanted to go far away.
And then you went to college in DC.
Right.
And what'd you go to school for?
I went to school for media studies.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really have anything in mind, honestly.
Okay.
When I went, I knew I was going to do something arts and sciences related because I was much stronger in, writing and literature than I was in the hard sciences. So
Okay.
that wasn't even really a question. So I went, and I actually went through 3 majors in my first year. So I went as a politics major originally. I was like, oh, I'm interested in politics. This will be great. I'll go to DC. That's where politics happens.
Right.
And then I realized that I was interested in how government works and stuff like that. And everyone else who was there was really, really into politics. They were all angling for jobs with congressmen and senators and stuff like that. And I was like, I need to take a step back because I don't care about this that much at all. So I switched to history my second semester. I only did a semester of history. And then I realized I said, well, I'm really into film. I kind of want to study film. So I switched to media studies and started my sophomore year. And it was a good fit until I realized that they don't give you a job, reviewing films when you graduate.
Right.
So that was a
kind
problem.
of have to carve that out.
Yeah.
So, okay. So I'm trying to trace your path because you started comedy relatively later.
I did. Yeah.
When did you start doing comedy?
I've been doing it about 3 years now.
Okay, so you're 3 years in.
So I was 32 when I started comedy.
Okay. And were you married at this point?
Oh yeah. I've been married for 2 years already when I started comedy.
Okay, because
Lucky her.
yeah, this is something I wanted to ask you, just because it's something that I am trying to balance in my relationship. How does because I know your wife, and what I would describe her as as a cool gal.
Okay.
So
I suppose I would too.
I would hope. So you guys are married, and then and you're on your path to being a lawyer?
We actually got married we got married in 2011. We graduated law school in 2010. So when we got married, I had just started my first real legal job a short period of time before that, like 4 months before we got married.
Okay.
And she at the time was doing contract attorney work.
Okay.
Which, are you familiar with that?
No.
A lot of the lawyer comedians we know, they're contract attorneys.
Okay.
So you do a job. Usually it's like document review, and you're on it for a few months. It's a good way to make a good chunk of money in a short period of time. So that's why it works for a lot of comedian schedules, because then they'll take time off and then they'll do another job when they need money. And
Gotcha.
so she did that because she was having trouble finding a job in an area where she wanted to work after law school. And when I started it, like, I actually wanted to start doing comedy. I was going to start in 2010. Like, after I graduated law school, I couldn't find a job, and I started writing jokes.
Okay.
And by the time I was starting to get to a point where I like, oh, I should go do these now.
Yeah.
Then I found my job, and I was working like 85-hour weeks, so there was no time for anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, God,
But I've had an interest in it. I didn't really have an interest in performing at all until, I want to say, like 2005 maybe. And then figured out that sometime in that time period, I got really into comedy podcasts. And
Oh, yeah?
I'd listen to them, and I'd think to myself, I could, do this. I could be a comedian.
What were your ones you were listening to?
I actually listened to Comedy Bang Bang from the beginning when it was Comedy Death Ray. I
Okay.
started listening to it when it started, and Douglas movies, same thing, like since the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, WTF.
Yeah, that was one of my
And you made it
favorites.
weird. Both those,
All good ones.
yeah, I don't listen to either of those two anymore.
Oh yeah.
And I'm actually my podcast listening has been super spotty for like the last 5 or 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
for a couple of reasons. One of them being that I got a new computer and I haven't subscribed to everything again on the new computer.
Gotcha.
But yeah, at the time those 4 were big. So for me,
Mm-hmm. So you would listen to those and go, I could probably do that.
yeah, I was thinking like, oh, I would love to be on a show like this, and
Uh-huh.
I know how one of my things, and I discovered fairly quickly that it doesn't translate the same way to comedy like it does to everything else, is that when I would decide I wanted to do something, I would take the steps needed to be somewhat successful in it.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I would figure out, for like testing and stuff like that. And when I said, oh, I'm going to be a lawyer. Okay, I'm going to go to law school. I'm going to do the stuff I need to do. And then I'm going to get a legal job. And I know how that works. So with comedy, all I need to do is figure out the, joke structure and stuff like that, and get better. And then I'm going to get past at this club, and this club. And that's how I thought of it like a job. Which,
Exactly.
and then I realized that in reality, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah, no, it really doesn't. Like there's, it almost, and I think the comparison that I've heard made a lot, and I think Pete Holmes is the one who says it's almost like the mafia,
Okay. Yeah. I can
or
see.
it's like a network of not necessarily handshakes, but it's definitely a lot of, if you've got your jokes, and your jokes are needed, eventually your jokes will be needed on this show, and then they can be needed on this show, and then they could be needed for money on this show.
Mm-hmm.
That it's that, like, that kind of path, but it's dealing with something so inherently subjective that you'll just drive yourself
Yeah.
mad wondering.
Yeah, it's certainly not as linear and which I should have known. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know why I was like, oh, it'll be different for me because I have a plan in place.
Right.
Like that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
First of all, you have to be funny. Second of all,
Exactly. What helped me what helped my stress go away of, oh no, I'm not at a certain point, was just doing more things where I had control over them. And that's what I found really helped me, as far as, feeling like I wasn't doing enough. Because that was my biggest thing. Like I would never freak out about how, I haven't been on Conan yet. Or
right? Yeah.
I would mostly just start to think of, I'm not doing enough. And if I keep doing these 10 open mics a week, I'm probably going to throw myself in front of the
Yeah.
bus.
Yeah. You do. It wears on you. I
Yeah.
think. And I've been doing it for, I think, less than half the time you have. You've been doing it for like 7 years, haven't you?
8. Yeah.
8 years. Okay. Yeah. So I've been doing it 3 years. And I feel like in the first little more than a year, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
it's just, you're on a high all the time. It's like, I got to go do this open mic. I got to go do this open mic now.
Yeah.
Got to get
and then
this
also,
out.
exactly. And then if you're starting in places where there's audience at the mics, that helps too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've only done comedy in New York too. So
Oh, that's right.
almost never. The one good thing is, though, I do feel like it forces you to get better faster, which
Yes.
is very nice, because I'm not like, oh, I'm hilarious now or anything like that, but I do feel like I got better, or got to a level that I'm not embarrassed of myself, in 3 years, where it might have taken 5 somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I
That's
think that
good.
helps. Also, because you're so, everybody comes here. Like
everyone.
You've been doing it for 8 years, and these people come from places where they were used to being, if not the headliner, but fairly prominent comics in their scenes.
Yeah.
They move here, and you all get dumped into the same bucket. And
Exactly.
so
You're all
when
minnows.
I'm at a mic with somebody who was, huge in Atlanta, and someone else who was huge in DC, and now we're all sitting waiting for each other. So just the fact that you have to do it while they're doing it forces you to become better because you don't want to embarrass yourself in front of other people. You want them to laugh. You want to produce good product.
Yeah.
And it's nice. It's a nice form of pressure.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it almost makes you have to work harder. Otherwise, you're just kind of like getting left behind.
Yeah. Or why are you doing it?
Yeah, because the people who move to New York and aren't driving themselves nuts working hard, there's no reason to be here.
Yeah, that's what I don't get. You could still be awesome in your scene and paying $200 a month so for your apartment.
Yeah, exactly. One thing I'm curious about is a couple things related to comedy, and then making sure that your personal life is intact.
Mm-hmm.
What was your wife's reaction to when you started doing comedy? Was she on board or was she skeptical?
It's varied. She has, as I think you're aware, she has a history of producing comedy.
Mm-hmm.
When she went to college at BU.
Uh-huh.
So I think if you go to college in Boston, you're required to do stand-up or improv. It's part of the rules.
Did she ever do stand-up?
She didn't, no. But what she did was she was a producer. She started as a props person for her friends at BU's improv troupe.
Mm-hmm.
And then they ran a bunch of shows at a couple venues in the city where she'd run sound for it, do lighting for it, stuff like that. So she had a lot of producing experience when she was in college doing comedy. Got away from it for a little while. Like some of her friends from college moved down here with her at the same time she did when she came down for law school.
Mm-hmm.
And she had some limited interactions with them in comedy, while they were here. One of them, he ended up writing for TV shows, so he moved to LA, so that ended his like sketch stuff he was doing here.
Mm-hmm.
But she was, I think, encouraged at first that I wanted to do it because it gave me something to look forward to and like a hobby that was a positive thing I wanted to create. And so she was into that, and it did certainly wear on us fairly early.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say after about a year, it got bad. We had one huge blow up fight about it. Like, is this relationship going to end type of fight about it?
Right.
And we kind of moved past it, and I am still doing as much as I can do, but I am more mindful of it now.
Yeah.
Where I try to get up, I try to get up 7 times a week at a mic if I can.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I have a couple shows, then do those too. And, but I temper it a little more, knowing that I should probably be home. Like I would, after we record this, I was going to go see a show in Long Island City.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm going to go home and eat dinner and watch Daredevil with my wife instead.
Yeah. That's exactly what I'm doing.
You have to make those decisions. And it's hard, especially when you get into it late, because you're like, I have so much catching up to do. I need to be doing this all the time. I need to be, we were talking before we went on about, hanging out at clubs and stuff like that. And I was like, I need to be hanging out at clubs, but I need to be at home too. So
I know
it's a balance. It's you just have to. I think what it comes down to is every, once a week you have to sort of evaluate and say, did I spend enough time with the person I've chosen to spend all my time with, in the relationship sense.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just there's no formula, but I'm getting better at it. Put it that way. Until and if I get past at clubs and I'm doing late nights and I'm just never home. So we'll see. Cross that bridge when we get to it.
Yeah, I'm the same. Like I'm really trying to and I'm lucky because my girlfriend's very supportive of the thing. She just wants me to do it,
right,
and get success so that there's a future in place.
Right, of course.
So yeah, I have a lot of that balancing act, and I have a lot of sometimes feeling like, am I neglecting am I neglecting one too much, and then I swing back and forth sometimes, but it's because what I found also and I don't know if maybe you share this. I still get up a lot, but I would look at someone like, and I'll not to be too name dropping, but I'll look at like Suba Agarwal, or Mike Lawrence, who I both love as people and as comedians, and they're doing like 20, 30, they're like, I don't know if Mike still is doing 20 sets a week. I think Suba probably is doing like 20
I think
to 30
because
sets a week.
Mike can just do whatever club spots he has during the week now.
He has
It's
more. He has
easier
more
for
of
him.
that luck. He has
Yeah,
maybe
it's more
of that
for him.
luxury.
It's more of a it's more scheduled. I think so. It's probably a little easier for him to still do a fair amount.
Yeah.
Because he's doing it for his his paycheck now essentially.
Yes.
So I think with Suba or so, I don't know. I don't want to like
No, yeah, I
talk
know. It's
about
kind of-
somebody's motivations or anything like that. I
Yeah.
think that she's very young still.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's at a different place in her life where she still can do this sort of thing. Maybe.
Yeah, it's possible. I've found, for me at least, that if I can still get a fair amount of stuff done, and at least if I'm not on stage every single night, if I'm doing something, like after this, I've recorded 2 episodes today.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's like I'm
You're
doing
creating something.
Yeah, and like I just wish I wish I didn't have to sleep. Like if I could just be awake constantly, I could get so much more
I wish
done.
I didn't have to go to a job 8 hours a day.
Oh.
I'm sure you feel that way too.
I do.
Yeah.
That would free up so much more time.
Exactly. I try to sell all the time. I try to sell Amy on the idea of me being a house husband. Without I'll be a dad to the cats. And
Yeah.
she won't go for it. I don't understand why. She's like, oh well, how will we pay your student loans? I'm like, whatever. I don't care. This is important. Just let me do this.
Yeah, I'll just string them out, and I'll probably die eventually.
Yeah, they'll take care of themselves eventually.
Yeah, no, that's the dream. I
Have
think.
you had Patrick Hasty on?
Not yet.
I should talk to him
I
because
tried to
I'd be
schedule him, but I
curious to
haven't.
know.
I will talk
about
to him.
his same thing. His sort of wife comedy.
Yeah, I'm gonna have
how
him
he
on.
deals with that.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm gonna have him on
like-
next week. I was gonna have him on yesterday, but
Wives are such a pain in the ass. Got to deal with them, keeping us down, away from our dreams.
I can't be attached to that statement, or Jesse will kill me. Like literally, just like, and then I'm dead.
It's hard because people can't always tell when I'm being sarcastic because my tone of voice doesn't change very much.
No, yeah,
So
neither.
I got to
does-
be careful.
Yeah, neither does mine.
I was kidding. In case you didn't pick up on that.
No, yeah, I'm the same way. I'm just very monotone. So let me think what else I might want to ask you. We've gone over like how you get into comedy and early life. I like that. And maybe we could just talk. Maybe we talk shop a little bit about because you on a similar thing. You produce several shows.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit, because this is just this might be a little inside baseball for some people, but I'm curious about once you've produced a show and are booking a show, like what have you found has been effective as far as getting audience out to it or making it
That's
a good event?
question.
Because I'm doing my one-man show right now, and I'm
when is
constant.
that? I'll talk to you about it later.
Oh, when's what?
When is your one-man show?
My next one's April 2nd at the Pine Box Rock Shop at 8.
I need to reschedule poker because that is April 2nd at John's apartment at 8.
Oh, okay.
I'll figure it out. That's a very good question, and
Yeah.
I don't think anybody knows the answer to it. I think what I've done, first of all, the show that Alex and I produce at Freddy's, we've been very lucky because Freddy's is a place that people go to see live things. It's so you can usually, and normally it's music. I mean, they do a lot of music there, but they do enough comedy, and they've been doing comedy for a long enough time now that I feel like people are into going there and watching comedy. So you can usually get a few people just to wander in that way. When I started producing shows, I tried to lean heavily on other comics and friends, and I hate doing that. I think we all hate doing that.
Yeah, me too.
But sometimes you just have no alternatives. But we've been good. I think because the show has been running there now for over 2 years, and people know of the show, even if it's not super well known. Most people have heard of it. We can usually do a pretty good job of filling the place. I think we probably average, an average show is probably about 15 people, which is good. I mean, I'm happy with that. It's not a huge room.
Yeah.
We've been very lucky some nights and had, like, our January show, we had 50 people.
Nice.
It was crazy. I have no
That's
idea.
awesome.
I thought it was going to be terrible because, it was January. We're starting a new night, new time. And it's just hard to get people out during the winter time in general because it's usually shitty outside.
Yeah.
And it was packed. I was overjoyed. I think the worst thing about producing shows in general is just worrying about having an audience. It's so stressful.
Oh yeah, me too. Because I mean, I prefer that stress to the do I have enough people to hit my bringer show requirements?
Oh
stress.
yeah, of course.
But because the stress of producing my own show is I don't want to let down the people that are on the show.
Yeah, I feel the same way. That's absolutely 100% what I always feel like. Like if I want people there so that you feel like it was worth your time to do this. And I ran into that last week. I had a really off night on the other show I produce at Pacific Standard. And when the show started, I had half of the comics who were on the show that night were there. They were still waiting on a couple. And I had 2 audience members.
Yeah.
And we started the show with 6 people in the room. And it got slightly better as it went along. We got 2 more organic audience members, which was nice. And then we got a couple significant others of comics who came. So we ended up having about 8 audience members plus the comics.
Yeah.
And that's okay, but I always want to do better than that. And that was the first night where we had a really, really bad night for a crowd. Like other thing is that I like to start on time.
Yeah.
It drives me crazy when people are like, all right, the show's at 8 o'clock, and then at 8:30 they decide to start. Like, just say it's gonna doors at 7:45 then, and start at 8. Don't, because the thing is that the people who show up on time, then you have them sitting in there like doing nothing, and you feel bad that these people showed up and they're being punished for showing up on time for a show,
Right.
because you're hoping that more people will wander through. So what I've done, and it's been fairly successful for Stuck Between Stations, apart from the fact that I've been really lucky that a lot of well-known comics have been willing to do the show. I run Facebook ads. I pay for Facebook ads for the show. And I found that if you run a Facebook ad for the show and you hit the right, the right demographics for it, and you have comedians that they've heard of with good credits, they'll click on the ads. So Facebook ads can actually work sometimes. And I'll get, on average, every month I'll get about at least 6 or 7 clicks, if not more. And I feel like a lot of those people end up coming, because I've had audiences of 20 people where I didn't know any of them, and it was great.
Oh,
Just people who
fantastic.
came to see the show. So
Awesome. I might have to do
so that's been useful,
okay. Very awesome, man.
and thousands of people see them. So maybe they don't end up going, but at least they know it exists now. So
Right. This is good. These are all skills I'm trying to learn, because I've decided, and it was partially we were talking a little bit about your audition for a club recently,
right.
and I started thinking that really the way that we could, you, I, and others in our group of friends are going to get the power where we can leverage it into club appearances, et cetera, et cetera. Different venues like, Union Hall. I would love to do a show at Union Hall someday.
I would too. I have to tell you a story about
Okay.
that.
Is it one you can tell me on?
No, I'm not
Okay,
going to do it on the podcast.
tell me later. Because we're just about wrapping up. Is once you have, if I can do enough things that people like and people like the things I do or like me, and I can maybe reach those people directly, then you have the power to like go in and be like, okay, that's how you create value.
I agree. Yeah. It's hard getting to that place.
Yeah. But like every time
Ultimately, that's what you want to do. Yeah. Have enough cachet where you have this built-in audience that you know is going to follow you.
Right. Because I haven't had too much luck in the I am a quality addition to your business approach yet.
Right.
So that's what I'm trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then also kind of, I guess, going back to what we started with, if you're pleasant to work with, then that's a good portion of
It helps, yeah.
the struggle. Well, gosh, John, I appreciate you coming over.
Yeah, this was great. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Did we go over, is there anything that we missed?
I think we covered most of my life. So,
Okay, good. That's what I was trying to do.
Yeah. If you have questions, write in, and I can fill in gaps in my biography for you.
Awesome. and real quick, I'll plug it in the description as well. You have an album out, right?
I do. Yeah, I have an album came out a couple weeks ago, and my wife actually recorded it and edited it. It's called "You Look Like Mad Men."
Awesome. And where's that available?
It is available at johnbilancini.bandcamp.com, and it's available for free to listen to, and it's $8 if you want the whole album, or $1 a track, and it clocks in at, I want to say, about I did a little over half an hour. After cutting some things, it ended up being about 25 minutes. So,
and I was at that album recording, so I will vouch for it as well. John is very funny, and it is definitely worth a listen.
yeah, and I'd love if you check it out. So, and Will, this is a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, John. I appreciate you doing it, man.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, folks, that's our show. I really love that conversation. I hope you got something out of it wherever you happen to be listening to this. If you want to hear more episodes of the show, you can subscribe on iTunes. You can rate or comment. I would appreciate any support you can give me. And you can always check my website, willcareyisfunny.com. That's CAREY isfunny.com. And I'll keep you updated on future episodes of the show and then my upcoming stand-up gigs. I am going to be in Tokyo from April 20th to the beginning of May with my very lovely girlfriend, and I'm going to be doing a show there at the Tokyo Comedy Store at a pub called the Hobgoblin. So if you happen to hear this in Tokyo, I would think it'd be so awesome if you heard this and then came to that show. If that happens, that'd be awesome, but won't lose sleep if you don't. So thank you again, guys, for listening, and I'll see you next week between awesome and disaster. Take care.